for a lot of people there as well. Speaking a lot, though, on trade, want to put this up on your screen as she talked about those trade agreements that are now being made. This is a post by President Trump on his Truth Social account, and it says, I have just concluded a telephone conversation with the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, in which was very successful, and that more and more we are getting to know and understand each other. The complexities of a deal with Mexico are somewhat different than other nations because of both of the problems and assets of the border. We have agreed, though, to extend for a 90-day period the exact same deal as we had for the last short period of time, namely that
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Coming up, I want to let you know some of what we have coming up later in the show. A 5-month-old dead after a dog attack in Volusia County. An absolutely heartbreaking and tragic situation there. We're going to hear from the Volusia County Sheriff talking about what we know about that situation. Also going to hear from some other officials who talk about what some of the next steps are after that. But again, they're calling it just an absolutely tragic accident. Heartbreaking details in that story coming up in just a little bit. We're also going to learn more in our Tampa connection about a new hurricane-resilient housing community being built in the Bay Area. We will talk with Nancy Gay about that in just a few minutes. But we begin with weather forcing a scrub of the planned launch of Crew-11.
Closeouts have started. Expect loud venting. On countdown net, hold. We are standing down for violation of weather rules.
On chart sequence is aborted.
Change in the weather conditions. At the last minute there, the countdown stopping with 1:07 left on the clock. And so joining us live now to talk about this is Dr. Don Platt, who's the department head of Aerospace, Physics, and Space Sciences at the Florida Institute of Technology, an associate professor of space systems, and also the director of the Spaceport Education Center. Dr. Platt, always good talking with you, and we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thanks for having me today.
So a lot of anticipation for this launch, as there often is, especially when we're talking about crewed launches. Just kind of give me your reaction to what we saw today, and apparently a pretty quick change in the weather conditions at the last minute.
Sure, yeah, as you saw in your video there was some dark clouds coming in the background behind the rocket, and so apparently some lightning came into the area, and so that's always a major concern with any launch, but certainly a launch that is carrying astronauts. And as we know, here in Florida, lightning and some bad weather can come up at a moment's notice. So I think we're all kind of understanding of that situation.
Yeah, what are some of those rules and those restrictions and things like that, those conditions that that do force scrubs in situations like this?
Sure. Well, in the early days of the space program, they weren't so concerned about launching with lightning around. And in fact, Apollo 12, which was the second mission that was supposed to land astronauts on the surface of the moon, was actually struck by lightning soon after it lifted off from its Kennedy Space Center launch pad, and it knocked out a whole series of different circuits, including most of the main power to the vehicle. And famous astronaut Pete Conrad had to think real quick and flip the right switches to get everything back in the right mode. But if something like that happened again, you could have a whole loss of power and loss of computers. And of course, rockets nowadays rely on computers to an even much larger extent than they did back in the Apollo program.
So is that the main reason we see scrubs with weather conditions, kind of an abundance of caution if there were to be lightning and things like that?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern, especially like I say with the electronics and all. So there's no need to launch when we can just scrub and come back tomorrow or the next day and try this again. We want to be safe and make sure that all the conditions are right. for a launch like this.
What's going on behind the scenes as that countdown's going on? Because we know that if that hit zero, they would be lifting off, and so that was pretty close to that. I'm sure there's a lot of decision making going on in those seconds as they tick off the clock. Just kind of walk us through what's happening behind the scenes there.
Yeah, so not only do the news programs, but NASA also hires weathermen, meteorologists to make forecasts and to look at what's happening on a moment by moment basis. So they're tracking everything in terms of what the wind conditions are, what the lightning conditions are. Is there rain that's coming in the area at any moment in time? And of course, all those tools are combining together, and there's a group of people that are looking at just that aspect of the rocket. We have other people looking at the propulsion system, the power system, every different type of component of the rocket. Well, there's a whole group that's also involved in the weather and making sure that there are no violations. And also, maybe if you saw in that video there, they were talking about a violation of some of the launch criteria, and some of those criteria then have to do with where there are potential lightning strikes in the area, as well as rain and wind direction and speed too.
So we know this was an instantaneous launch going off at a very specific moment. Can you kind of explain for us why then when you have to have a hold like this because of the weather, they couldn't just take off a few minutes later, and why it's now set for a very specific time tomorrow?
Sure, yeah. Rockets require a tremendous amount of energy. They're going from basically sitting here on their seaside launch pad to 17,500 miles an hour. And it takes so much energy to get into that position. They can only use that energy in a very short period of time. Now, of course, if they were only interested in getting into space, it may not matter. But they have a very tight connection, if you will, thinking about airplanes, with the International Space Station. And the International Space Station is going around the Earth every 90 minutes, so it's going really fast. And so that means waiting even a few seconds, the space station will have moved so far along in its orbit, there's just not enough energy for this rocket to be able to get the astronauts to be able to connect with the International Space Station.
We know they had said today that the flight would have been about 40 hours, which is, they said, a little bit longer than it normally is, just because of the way where things would be when when they finally got to meet up. Do you know if the flight tomorrow will be able to be any shorter, or will it be about the same?
It'll typically probably be about the same. Usually what happens is it takes a few weeks for those types of conditions to change in terms of the energy needed to get into a certain location compared to where you are here on the Earth. Of course, our pad is always at the same position, but the station is sort of changing in its orbital parameters over time based on things like the upper atmosphere. And so a few days won't change that too much, but it is sort of a long wait to finally connect it with the station and see your friends up there on the station after you launch.
Speaking of long waits, we know that Crew-11 has already been waiting for a while for this chance for their launch and their trip to the space station. Now will have to wait a little bit longer. What's that like for these astronauts? Because we know as this scrub, they still have to stay up there for a while as things are kind of done before they are able to get down. I'm just kind of curious
Right.
what the mentality is, and what's that like? Is this just part of it?
Yeah, it is kind of part of it. We think about the astronauts are training for multiple years before they even get to the launch pad as a rookie. And on this crew, we have astronauts like Mike Fink, who has been an astronaut for 15 or more years. He's seen everything, and he can definitely assist the new crew members with, getting them the right mindset, if you will, to that's okay, we'll turn around and we'll do it again. And a lot of them, of course, have military related backgrounds, and so they know, this is all part of the mission, and we'll do it when it's right and when we're ready to go. And you have to have that frame of mind to even be selected as an astronaut.
Well, fingers crossed everything can go off without a hitch tomorrow. Dr. Don Platt from the Florida Institute of Technology, always appreciate your perspective, and thanks for joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Sure, my pleasure, anytime.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa connection, and for that we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Garrett. We're going to start off with some sad news today. Yesterday afternoon, a Pinellas County Schools police sergeant passed away after participating in an active assailant drill at Clearwater High School earlier in the day. Now we're being told that Sergeant Greg Graff died around 4:15 p.m. from a medical emergency. He was participating in an additional indoor classroom training when he collapsed, and that's when he was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, he did pass away yesterday afternoon. Now, afterwards, officers lined up to salute Graff as he was escorted from Morton Plant Hospital to a Tarpon Springs funeral home Wednesday evening. He spent the last 7 years keeping Pinellas County School students and faculty safe. He also spent 29 years in law enforcement in Georgia. He is survived by his wife, 3 children, as well as 6 grandchildren. Garrett?
Just a sad story there. Oh, I will say it's always moving, I think, to see how officers pay respects to their brothers and sisters when they're, after a loss like that, though.
Yes, it is, as you mentioned, it's always moving, and it's such a powerful image to see all of those officers lined up to give him a final salute.
Let's go to story number 2, Nancy, and that's a story out of Manatee County.
Yes, family and friends of a Manatee County high school wrestler who was shot and killed almost a year ago. Right now, they are calling for justice. Now, according to police reports, 17-year-old Carter Lane had been playing with a gun while hanging out with his friends in the backyard, claiming that that gun was not loaded. Although his friends told him to stop, the gun fired and killed 16-year-old Jan Michael Feeney. And last night, those who knew Feeney gathered outside the Manatee County Courthouse because they want the court to deny Lane a youthful offender status. Now, Lane, he did plead no contest to manslaughter, and the maximum sentence for manslaughter is 30 years. However, if he is granted youthful offender status because he's 17, he could serve less time in prison, and Feeney's loved ones fear that those consequences may not match the loss of losing their loved one, Jan Michael Feeney. Now, they are pushing for the maximum sentence of 30 years, and Lane is expected to be sentenced on September 24th. Garrett?
Gosh, such a tragedy. You can only imagine what the family and loved ones are going through even after 1 year from a loss so young.
Yes, he was so young. Both of them were so young, and he claimed that this gun, he didn't know the gun was loaded. I mean, he shouldn't have been playing with a firearm in the first place, but it's a loss on both sides here because, you do have the 16-year-old who was just hanging out with his friends who ended up being shot and killed, but then you also have the shooter who said he didn't know the gun was loaded. Yes, he should not have been playing with a firearm in the first place, but I'm sure he's living with a lot of guilt of shooting his friend, even if it was accidental.
Yeah. Story number 3, and that is ground broken on a new hurricane-resilient housing community.
Yes, this community is actually being built by Habitat for Humanity out in Brandon. They did break ground on this new affordable housing community yesterday, and this community is designed to better withstand Florida's increasing hurricane seasons. The project is called Windhorse Commons and will feature 23 two-story homes built with hurricane-resilient materials, including concrete block construction, hip roofs, as well as hurricane shutters. This is the first Habitat for Humanity project in the area to fully integrate storm-resistant design at this level. Now, these homes are expected to be complete in early 2026, with families moving in shortly afterward. Garrett?
That's certainly exciting, and we know that that's not long for those homes to be completed. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, definitely exciting. So hopefully by the start of next year's hurricane season, families will be ready to be moved into these homes, and hopefully they will be able to withstand hurricane season. Hopefully with no damage, but if they do have damage, it will be very minimal.
Yeah, certainly something that will make a difference for a lot of families there. Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. Absolute gut-wrenching story out of Volusia County, where a 5-month-old boy is dead after an apparent dog attack. It happened last night at a home on Carolina Avenue in Ormond Beach. The baby was being taken care of by some family members while his parents were out celebrating the boy's mom's 21st birthday. Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood spoke with reporters earlier, talking about what we know about this incident, what happened, and why they believe this is just a tragic accident.
First, thank you for coming, and secondly, I wish you weren't here. This is extremely, extremely heartbreaking of a story. We have a young couple that leaves their 5-month-old son Carter in the custody of their great-grandmother and great-aunt, and they go out to dinner to celebrate mom's birthday. Grandmom and great-grandmom and the great-aunt, 5-month-old's being a little fussy. They decide to put him into the bedroom. They put him in the bedroom, they close the door, and then the great-aunt allows her 3 dogs out of the cage. They go into the kitchen to make tea and toast. And when they return, they notice that the bedroom door is open. And when the great-grandmother walks in, she sees their biggest dog, which is a Great Dane Husky mix, 130-pound, 2-year-old dog, sitting next to Carter, the little boy, and he appears to be bleeding and he's lifeless. There's a horrific 911 call comes in. As she's on the phone with 911, mom and dad come home. They see the little boy, they scoop him up, and they rush him to Advent Hospital in Daytona Beach, where he is pronounced dead. Animal control was called. They have taken custody of the dog. Obviously, there's a process that goes with that. There's a 10-day hold on the dog. The family can appeal if they want, and then eventually the dog will be euthanized for that. We're investigating. This is tragic all the way around. You have a young mother will remember on her birthday that her child is dead, and the grandparents. I mean, I just don't know how anybody feels about this. It is so tragic. On what started to be a great night ends up when you return home, your child is dead, and the grandparent and the great aunt. I can't imagine how anybody in this family feels. So I would ask people. You know, there's some mean son of a bitches out there that get on social media behind the keyboard under the cloak of anonymity and publish some really hurtful, evil stuff. You know, and I hope if you have a heart, you'll find in your heart that offer condolences, not some of the stuff that I saw and has been pointed out to me that you morons want to post out there. So, any questions?
When you say, obviously this is a tragedy, but then you say, you know, you're investigating. What is it? Just to investigate circumstances?
It's investigating to get the truth out and see what happened and see, was there negligence, was there whatever. I mean, right now, what I told you is what we know. I don't believe in my heart that the great aunt and the great grandmother wanted to do anything like that. But still, you still owe Carter, the little guy, a full investigation to determine everything that occurred. And everything I told you is what my detectives were able to determine since that 911 call came in.
When they discovered the boy, was it almost immediately or had some time?
I think it wasn't that much of a time period because what had happened is, and what I'm being told by the investigators, is the door is like a door like that. It's one of them where you push the handle down. So when they pull the door shut and she then lets the dogs out of the cage, the assumption is that the Great Dane is big enough and strong enough at 130 pounds to go over and hit the door and then go into the room. And I'm speculating on this. A 5-month-old is how big compared to a 130-pound puppy that could just simply think it's a toy or whatever, and then grabs it and bites it and shakes it and obviously it kills the baby.
It sounds like the dog did not have any kind of history. And then did the dog live there with the aunt and grandmother? They all lived there?
I'm not sure about that one, but the dogs resided in the house. It's the great aunt's house, if I'm reading it right. And she had them. The dogs were kenneled, and when they put the baby down, and they closed the doors when they let the dogs out of the kennel. and the Great Dane was able to open up that door and go into the bedroom. And after they make, how long does it make a cup of tea and put toast in the toaster? They saw the door opened and they went into the bedroom. That's what the 911 call says. The 911 call says that the dog hurt the baby.
You were telling Jason earlier the dog was pretty young.
2 years old. It's a 2-year-old Great Dane Husky, weighs 130 pounds. I don't know. I don't know what message you can give on that. I mean, I don't know. It's, you know, it's for some reason that only God knows the answer to, as to why this happened.
Since this was contained to the house, the law that passed recently,
This has nothing to do. This is completely different than Michael. What happened to Michael, who was out on his bike and was attacked. You know, this is, you're in your home, you're kenneling your dogs, you're a great grandmother and a great aunt. You're watching the baby while, you know, your niece and your granddaughter goes out to celebrate her 21st birthday. And that's what they come home to. They walk through the door as the great grandmother's on the phone with 911.
Just sickening in so many ways to hear about that. And we also did hear from the Volusia County Department of Public Protection Director, who talked a little bit more about the process from here and where things go, especially when it comes to that dog. As you heard the sheriff say, they do understand their belief at this point is that this was just an awful, awful accident, but there are still procedures to be followed here. And this is what the Director of Public Protection said about these next steps.
Right, so right now we are actually in the process of serving a notice of sufficient cause, which will officially deem the dog dangerous. It is currently being held in quarantine. There is a 10-day period where the owner is able to appeal that decision, and then we'll kind of go from there. State statute, because there was a death that was related to this, though, is that once the dog is deemed dangerous and the appeals process is played out, we would then euthanize the dog, humanely euthanize the dog.
Have you guys ever dealt with this dog before or had any contact with her?
We've had no contact and no calls at that location.
And then, could you describe what kind of dog it is? I know the sheriff mentioned that it might be a Great Dane.
My understanding is that it's a Great Dane. Might be a Great Dane mix. It's difficult to always accurately breed a dog, but it's a large dog, Great Dane type.
And I think a lot of us know, but can you explain what the quarantine looks like for this dog?
Right. So it's held in a shelter location. It's 10 days. It's held by itself. The shelter location will follow dangerous dog protocols, so it doesn't come into contact with other animals, and the location has its own types of procedures in dealing with dangerous dogs to protect staff as well.
It's typically not a dangerous breed dog, but any dog could be dangerous at any point. Is there any message out there? I know this is just a tragic kind of accident, but is there a message out there for people?
It is a tragic accident, and I do want to say on behalf of Volusia County that our sincerest condolences go out to the family. This is an absolutely tragic incident that's occurred, and it is difficult because any dog has the potential of doing some harm, whether it's through aggression or any other means. And so it's really important to be aware of the dog when it's in your house, to understand dog behavior, to make sure that you're properly socializing that dog and monitoring that dog. But yes, it's my understanding that this is just a huge tragedy and tragic incident that occurred.
And I don't know if you know off the top of your head, like the numbers when it comes to dog attacks that ended in a death in the last 10 or 20 years here in Volusia.
Here in Volusia, it just really isn't common. It's something that's possible, of course, but not common. I think we all remember the incident out of DeLand with a young child. So that's one. And since that, or before that, that was very rare. So nobody had any history or memory of one happening before that. So so this is a rare occurrence for something like this to occur.
If they were to appeal, what is the process like? Is there like a board? Would it go before like a board?
Right, so dangerous dog appeals go to a special magistrate. So they would have to submit in writing that they would request an appeal. That would go to the special magistrate, where they would present any kind of evidence that would be to the contrary of deeming the dog dangerous, and then that special magistrate would hand down their ruling, and then our the path moving forward then would depend on the ruling of that special magistrate. However, this was a death that occurred in this instance, so it would be a steep hill to climb.
What is the new state law requiring you guys to do? The new state law?
New state law.
New state. Oh, the new
Right. No. So recent state statute, the Pam Rock Act, actually turned a lot of maize into musts, really, with the things that we're required to do. But we are required then, as we have right now, to take the dog into custody, to place it under quarantine, and then to humanely euthanize that dog once it's deemed dangerous.
We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. Second day of an NTSB hearing in Washington, D.C. about the midair collision that happened back in January over the Potomac River between a U.S. Army, a Black Hawk helicopter, and an American Airlines commercial flight. That happened not far from the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. This is the second day of a 3-day investigative hearing looking into what happened. Let's go ahead and listen in for a few minutes as this live hearing continues in Washington, D.C.
You know, I feel like of all events, I understand that maybe there could have been some survivors, let's say, and you were holding out hope, but the potential for serious injuries is also a reason to drug and alcohol test. So I feel like of all the possible events, it was so obvious so quickly that we had a major event that I'm wondering, when would we get to the process where we can actually drug and alcohol test within the 2-hour requirement?
I don't disagree with you at all. You're absolutely correct in everything you said. And hopefully we never have to exercise it, but I can assure you we will provide direction and guidance that they would comply with those expectations and unforeseen circumstances happen again.
Do you have any specifics of what has been done to expedite this process should another event occur?
So we're revising the standard operating procedures and the 1030.3 order that governs our SRT process, our drug and alcohol coordination process, is currently under revision right now. I've had direct conversations with the Vice President of Air Traffic Services and the Director and Deputy Director of the Eastern Service Area, relaying my expectations.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. That's all the questions I have in that area.
Mr. Jarvis, this is a good time to touch on these other areas. ECVs and ICVs. Could you tell us which are external compliance verifications and internal compliance verifications? Could you tell us what these are and what the purpose is of each and how often they're conducted and by whom?
Sure. A internal compliance verification is conducted by an air traffic control facility. These are conducted annually, and they go from October 1st through September 30th each fiscal year. The reason for these, we call them evaluations, they're compliance verifications. The reason for these, each facility, based on its type, has a checklist of items, and each item may represent a certain topic. We'll say, I'm just going to throw one out there, call sign usage, and the facility is going to look at that topic and see how their controllers are doing when it comes to call sign usage, and there's a description of what specifically is the item is looking for, and also a reference to where the regulation is located, so they can go to that location and pull it up. So a facility like DCA would have approximately 108 items, just guess. And they would rate those. Normally what each facility does is each quarter they break that down into about 25%. Some items might be looked at throughout the whole year, but they try to accomplish approximately 25% per quarter. And at any time, if they find non-compliance, an item that's sticking out that they're having problems with, at that point they can rate that item as non-compliant and start a mitigation plan to help try to bring that item back into compliance. Sometimes these can be fixed in that calendar year. Other times it's carried over to the following year. An external compliance verification, ECV, is conducted by the Eastern Service Center. In this, we have 3 different service centers. This being the Eastern Service Center Quality Control Group, which is part of Mission Support. They're located at the regional office in Atlanta. Our group, one of our responsibilities is to conduct these evaluations, the ECVs. We conduct approximately 60 per year in all types of different facilities, whether it's an en route.
This NTSB hearing continuing, talking about some evaluations, some compliance verifications, as they call it. And again, this is a 3-day hearing. This is the 2nd day. It will continue into tomorrow. The NTSB really looking at all kinds of different angles of this and different aspects of what happened. You heard some of the questioning a minute ago when it comes to air traffic control. So really just a lot of different aspects, and really delving into this on this 2nd day of a 3-day investigative hearing in Washington, D.C. We're going to take a quick break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. Garrett Wymer here, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. We are live today on Fox Local and on YouTube. We appreciate you joining us. Advocates today talked about their concerns about rising costs when it comes to healthcare costs and also proposed insurance rates for the next year. They cited data saying that folks could face increases of up to 25% in some cases, and there are concerns about that, especially when it comes on the heels of impacts with Medicaid funding cuts from the big beautiful bill that Congress recently passed. And so some of these organizations today held a virtual news conference to talk about these impacts and call on Congress to extend the enhanced tax credit that they say make the Affordable Care Act marketplace coverage more affordable. One of the organizations, one of the groups that was part of this virtual news conference was the Florida Voices for Health. Executive Director Scott Darius spoke at that about the impacts for Floridians. Here's what he said during that news conference this morning.
My name is Scott Darius, and I'm the Executive Director of Florida Voices for Health. We're a statewide health advocacy organization, and as a health advocacy organization, our mission is really to improve access to healthcare for all Floridians. And considering all the ways that H.R. 1 will make it harder for some of the most vulnerable around the state and the country to access care, the bill obviously gives us some very real concerns. But for all the things that the bill does, of most concern for Floridians are the two things that the bill doesn't do. The first is the non-extension of these enhanced premium tax credits that we've been discussing here. And on that front, the bottom line is that Florida has the most to lose. But a little bit of context, right? Despite all the resistance that we saw from our state officials in 2012 and 2013, from the very first open enrollment period, Florida has led the nation in the number of people enrolled in Obamacare or healthcare.gov, right? The healthcare exchange. In fact, after that first open enrollment period, we were named as the ACA's greatest success story. But then since then, we've continued to lead in enrollments year after year. We've watched our uninsured rate drop to its lowest point in a long time. And more importantly, people were getting the care that they needed. I'll say that myself, as a navigator during those first couple of open enrollments, what a moment it was to hug people as they cried, finally getting access to the healthcare that they'd only dreamed about previously. But now we're at a record-breaking 4.7 million Floridians. That's 1 in 5 Floridians who are enrolled in the federal marketplace. And that achievement, I think, is due in large part to the existing need in the state and demand, but also the availability of the enhanced premium tax credits, like we heard from David and Anthony. But now, without the extension of those credits and the expected increase in the baseline insurance rates, KFF estimates that over 2 million Floridians will be priced out of ACA healthcare coverage. 2 million Floridians who no longer will have access or be able to pay for healthcare through the marketplace. And just to say that for the boon that the ACA has been to Florida, it's also just primarily helped to mitigate the impacts of other kind of bad healthcare policies that we've seen here in the state. Before these tax credits expire at the end of the year, Florida still has the 3rd highest uninsured rate in the nation, leading to poor health outcomes, but also widespread medical debt. And Florida also still ranked 47th when it comes to healthcare access and affordability. So to lose the safety net that really the ACA has been to so many Floridians over the last couple of years is a big deal. And yeah, with 2 million Floridians estimated to lose coverage, it means that our uninsured rate here in the state is projected to double. And that's a larger increase than any other state. So it's a serious situation and a moment where we're urging Florida lawmakers to act and extend those premium tax credits. But at the same time, I think what's also important is the second thing that H.R. 1 didn't do, which is it did not change the biggest incentive that states have to expand their Medicaid programs. States that expand their Medicaid programs for more low-income people will still only be responsible for 10% of the cost. The federal government will still return Florida's tax dollars to us to cover the remaining 90% of the cost for Medicaid expansion. Now, before this bill, before this moment, there were about 1.4 million poor but hardworking Floridians who would have been eligible for Medicaid expansion. But now, among those who have been priced out of the marketplace, as these tax credits expire and as the baseline premium goes up, you have 2.4 million Floridians who are under 138% of the poverty level. 2.4 million Floridians who are enrolled in the marketplace currently who also earn below 138% of the poverty level, meaning that we will have over 3 million Floridians, hardworking Floridians, who could benefit from Medicaid expansion, meaning it's never been a more important time to get this thing done. And, while we're not holding our breath, we don't anticipate that this is something our state officials will consider after years of ignoring it. Floridians actually have a say in how this goes. Florida Decides Healthcare, which is the state's ballot initiative campaign for Medicaid expansion, it's rolling and on pace to make the ballot in 2026. We're really excited for Floridians to have a say in their healthcare because our most recent polling as a campaign shows that this is something people want. Just in July, Florida Decides Healthcare ran a poll that was heavily skewed towards a conservative turnout. And we found broad bipartisan support for this initiative, with 67% of people saying yes and only 25% of people in opposition. And that 67% of support is just the start, right? The initial asking. It's a level of support that only goes up as people learn more about what the amendment actually does. So while we, as advocates, will continue to call on our elected officials to act, I also want to encourage people who care about healthcare or people who are worried about their own healthcare or the healthcare of their families to get involved in this campaign by visiting floridadecideshealthcare.org.
We'll be right back with more Florida Live after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. NFL training camp continues. This is the first week of full pads practice, and the Miami Dolphins are looking to bounce back after a disappointing season. They were 8-9, missed the playoffs last year, so they certainly have some work to do. We heard from Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa after practice yesterday. He's talking about how he's holding up. We know he's had some big injuries over the past few years, a lot of things he's been dealing with. And so he talks about how he's holding up now this first week of full pads practice, and also talked about the outlook heading into what they hope to be a bounce back season for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, no, I talk to the players more than I talk to the coaches about certain things. And then if I really do need something back again, then I'll go mention that to Mike. I have conversations with Weave about certain looks that they do, reasons as to why they do it, and then why I think that's very helpful for my game. So we go about it in that sense. But just coming out, not knowing what they're going to do, you know, I think that's the way to do it in training camp, so that as you go out, with what your sound bites are, your footwork, what you should be thinking of. If you go out there and you're thinking about the right stuff, then we'll see it on film. And if you're not, you know, that too, we'll see it on film, and you'll feel that as well in practice.
What's the conversations like with Mika when I've seen you go up to him and ask him about, I guess, particular looks? What are those conversations about?
Yeah, he's had a couple looks where he wasn't happy with himself in regards to what I did with my eyes or what I did with my footwork to flip back to throw to where he potentially should have been. And then there are also some where he was baiting me into throwing it, and then, you know, as you can see on the film, could it have been a pick, could it have been a big hit? You know, we don't know. I'm just trying to talk with him because it looked like he was going to the post. Then he ends up becoming a robber, you know. I don't know, just the pre-snap to post-snap, the games that he plays with me, I really enjoy that, and he's helping get me better as well as vice versa.
That said, 7 practices, no picks for you. What do you think is contributing to that? During camp point, a lot of things can be installed, and sometimes you are in a position where it's tough on the court.
Yeah, I would say I'm not thinking too much about if I throw an interception or if I don't throw an interception. In camp, you just want to see how consistent you can be with the plays that you're given. And a lot of the times I'm just going to try to see what this is going to look like and what this is going to play like. And if you want to try to see if this fits in this window on a certain pass, you try to see it. I mean, we did that today on one of the first plays maybe of camp today. So, you know, I'm not really basing it off of what the result is or isn't for myself in this training camp. I have about 2 or 3 things max that I have for myself that I'm focusing on for each practice that I go out there. And I can tell you, like, 2 of the 3 things I did not do really well today. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not result oriented, you know, because I know for myself what I wanted to get done, and I wasn't able to get that done today. And those things are private.
So a question about your connection with Waddle, which I know goes back a long way. I know Tyreek wasn't there for a lot of the off-season program.
Yep.
You were orange jersey 2 days ago, Waddle orange jersey today. Has the relationship gotten stronger, and if so, in what ways?
I would say the relationship has continued to grow. I wouldn't say it's gotten stronger or weaker. I hang out with Waddle pretty much the same. I've been hanging out with him over these past couple years. I just think there's a difference in his game this year, and there's a difference in Reek's game this year because of the way that they communicate with each other now. They communicate as a whole now. And, you know, like the other things I've said about, you know, Reek and then with Waddle as well. But those guys are the guys that get things going for our offense, you know. So getting those guys on the same board as each other with me, you know, we're able to help each other make practices look pretty good.
What's the difference between facing Chop Robinson this year compared to last year?
Chop's growing up, man. That boy's growing up, getting a little more muscle. The boy's getting a little faster. But you can tell someone's age by their music, and I kind of didn't like his playlist yesterday. You know what I'm saying? I didn't like his playlist yesterday. But other than that, outside of music, pretty good football player. I think Quinn's been balling. I think he's been buying into what he's been told in the quarterback room, and then things that he's taken from the meeting rooms with Mike's meetings, Slow's meetings, and Bev's meetings, and he's been able to take that out here on the practice field, and he's been doing really well. So, you know, I think Zach's been doing pretty good as well, and they'll continue to work. They'll continue to get me better. I'll continue to get those guys better, and continue to help that room grow.
Are you happy with the level of play so
For who?
For the whole team.
Nah. There's always going to be things that we need to correct, and I think that's the way to have it. Whether you have a good practice, whether you have a bad practice, you continue to stay even keel as a team, and you continue to find things. Even if you thought you had a good practice, you continue to find things that you need to work on, and I think that's how you continue to grow and get better as a team.
So is there any extra motivation this year seeing Devontae and Jalen get their rings just for you guys on this team?
Man, there's always been motivation to get a ring, but you know what I'm saying, now that those guys got a ring, we got to do something about that. So talking with Ski, or talking with Jalen Waddle, talking with Jalen Waddle, we've been on that. So trying to make that possible.
How was your approach? Last week's conversation, how has that rebuilding of the relationship that Tyreek has had to go through been?
It's been good. We're continuing to grow that relationship, but where we're at with that, that's where we're at, and it's still growing. That's it.
How has your approach to practice changed from year 1 to now year 6?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is how I would rate my practices based off of the result. That's how I would gauge it. If I threw however many completions, and in comparison to an incompletion or touchdowns to no interceptions, that's how I would sort of gauge it, and never really had a way for myself in setting goals. It was just I got to do good. Well, everybody wants to do good, but
Tua Tagovailoa speaking after practice yesterday as NFL training camp continues. I tell you, if your only complaint about a teammate is their playlist, then it sounds like they're getting along pretty fine other than that. Well, one more quick note before we wrap up here on Florida Live. Governor Ron DeSantis confirming that his DOJ audit team is now on the ground in Broward County and in Gainesville. We heard from the governor talking about those audits being among the first DOJ audits to look at local government spending. And we know those audit teams are now on the ground. Thanks for joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live. I'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock, live on Fox Local and on YouTube.